What is going on, guys? Jack here, and welcome back to episode 4 of the Academy, here with Social Montbéliard, and I'm really excited. We've just had our intake. I've sorted things out a little bit better than last time you were here for an intake episode, but we're looking good. We're looking really good. Let's have a look here. So, intake came in not that long ago. We had a golden generation again. Now, I will start by saying I didn't know this existed until this year, but a lot of people have been telling me on Twitter, I've seen in a few other people's YouTube saves, this line seems to be not necessarily bugged, but it seems to be used all the time. I mean, I'm not going to get any less excited about it. But yeah, we had another quote-unquote golden generation. I don't know if that's because our players are very good for the division we're in. Obviously, Sochaux, great youth facilities. We're expected to get in some good young players. There is one standout player this year. We'll talk about him here, Gautier. And then some other solid players. I wouldn't say it's quite as good as last year across the board, but obviously one star player is always kind of worth being excited about. And well, when I say a star player, I mean a star player. Here we have Valentin Gautier. Look at him. Look, he's 40. His birthday's in 2 weeks. I've got the cake on order. This guy is going to be massive for us. I'm so excited by him because some of you will know, if you've watched my YouTube series for ages, I've never really had that greater intakes. I was thinking about it prior to this year. I think the best intakes I've had were Gary and Felix at Gibraltar Apex, and even then they were kind of good for the division. They weren't really good. I've seen Sochaux get good players in past FMs, and it's nice to be able to manage a team like this who, you know, traditionally do get good intakes. We've had two absolute barnstormers. I can't expect this every year, but I'm going to enjoy it while I can. This guy, 14 though, looks insane. You know, great pace, great acceleration. His heading's actually deceptively good for a 14-year-old right back. He's going to be an incredible wing back. Just absolutely incredible. You look at him here. His acceleration, pace and stamina are good. I'd kind of like his strength and fitness to be a little better. But you can see here, crossing of 10, dribbling of 10. He's got everything he needs. You know, even the concentration is good. And his decisions to be as good as they are at this age is only exciting. If we look at his report as well, he's not injury prone, so maybe he is better than Chevalier. You may have noticed on the home screen, he is considered our hot prospect in the team, and I think it's hard to look past him. He is great. So yeah, I think with this guy, you can see here training. I'm going to train him, I think, to just play complete wingback. I feel like we just try and complete him off. Now, because he is 14 and his birthday isn't in January like Chevalier's is, he won't be able to play for a season and a half in the first team. However, to help this guy's development, I'm going to put him in the reserve team. I think he can play in reserve games. But either way, I want him to train with the reserves, but then we're going to make him available for the under-19s as well. I'm just going to check. The reserve league, can a player who is 14 play in this division? Looks like they can, so that could be very, very good for his development. Beyond him, though, there are a few other players definitely worth talking about. I don't want to make it the Gautier show. We've got Orvray here, who looks like he has good potential. You can see here 7 pros, 7 cons. Obviously, great speed, which is nice. A little bit lacking in the mentals department, a little bit lacking in a few departments, but a player with some good potential. You can see here he could improve a lot in the future, but right now he is lacking quite a lot, and he was our second best player, at least in the opinion of our assistant. In terms of his training, I think the best thing for him is just going to be to train him maybe on left mid. See, part of me wants to train him on left mid on winger, but it doesn't really give that much attention to his mentals, whereas he is kind of fairly comfortable as a centre attacking mid. So I'm wondering if we train him to play attacking midfielder and then train his dribbling on top of that, because his crossing's already fairly solid. The only issue then is not all his physicals get that much TLC. I guess we could play Shadow Striker. That doesn't help his flair so much, but it would help cover off a few of his weaknesses. It would help make him a more complete kind of player going forward as well. It would help with his long shot technique and passing, as well as really rounding off his physicals. I feel like with his mentals, they're probably never going to be great between them all. But he has potential, actually. I think we will stick with Shadow Striker for now on him. I don't want to go on Marchand. I want to be back on Orvray here. I'm thinking Shadow Striker and then probably crossing on top. Or maybe balance. Balance wouldn't be quite good to improve because his physicals are lacking kind of here, there and everywhere. So I think we'll train this guy as a shadow striker for now. The other player that we had, I already clicked on him by accident. We have here Marchand, who is a good centre-back. We have a plethora of young centre-back talent. But this guy has potential. Right now he's got low self-belief. His determination isn't that great, so we're going to get him tutored immediately. And I think Ogier is going to be a good match for him. to take him under his wing and mentor him off the pitch. Worth noting, Ogier and Gibault, both in the last year of their contract, so we might not have them as tutors for much longer, so I want to make the most of them while we can. So I think that's going to be good for Marchand. He's a good centre-back. He looks like he has some potential. Needs to get a little bit better in the air, but he's not terrible there. Either-footed is kind of nice. In terms of his actual training, I feel like just training him at centre-back defend is probably going to be our best bet right now. You can see in the mental department he is lacking a little bit as well. And I think on top of that, we'll probably train. His quickness isn't too bad. His acceleration's good. I'm kind of tempted to put a little bit more attention into his strength, because that is a little lacking at the moment. Although his positioning is lacking too, and I think we'll go with that just because that could be a little bit more difficult to improve. You'll notice this year, last year certainly, I signed all the trialists, or at least I asked my assistant. This year I've been a little bit more brutal in terms of players who I don't think are good enough. I've terminated the contracts of. You can see here we have the remainder of our youth intake here. It has got some good players in here. As I said, 4-star potential isn't too bad, although it could be 3-star. Of course, it's worth mentioning that 4-star potential in our team right now, if we just look at an example of a 4-star player, is about the quality of Panna, so maybe a low-end League player, and that is assuming these players kind of develop to the best of their ability. So let's have a quick look through them here. We've got Romain Youssef. Of course, with these, I can't set their training because they are still yet to sign, but they will hopefully be signing. He looks like an okay goalkeeper, a little bit lacking in a few different areas. I think that's going to be the case with a fair few of these players, really. We have here Mirval. Looks okay, but we do have better striker options out there. His physicals are kind of nice. Aerially, he's quite a good presence, but again, there's a few gaps in his game. Leroux here, again, he looks okay, but when you compare him to some of the other youngsters we already have, he's not that great. We have Manjek here, who is a good centre-back. We have a lot of good centre-backs, though. He is going to be competing in a highly competitive area of the pitch. With these players, I've offered them all youth contracts, so they are not on like big full-time deals. Just because whilst they do have good potential, you can see just looking through them, they're not actually that great. In reality, whilst this has been labelled as a golden generation, it might well have been a golden generation if we were still a Ligue 2 side. But the fact of the matter is that we're a team trying to get to the top kind of flight and hopefully to establish ourselves. Really, ideally, I'd like to see us achieve in Europe within the first 3 seasons. Even if a lot of these kind of golden generation players for a Ligue 2 team were to develop, they probably aren't going to be good enough for our team. So Gauthier is definitely kind of the pick of the bunch. Auvray, as I mentioned, is decent. And Marchand has potential which he might be able to fulfill. So they're the pick of the bunches in terms of the intake this year. I don't want to make this episode exclusively about the intake. I do want to give a little bit of a catch-up on some of the youth kind of progression since we were last here. Of course, Lacroix continuing to play in the first team. You can see really drastically improving the 18-year-old. Of course, promoted to this team kind of at the start of the year. He's been doing well. We're training his quickness. There has been good results there. His acceleration has gone from 8 to 10.4, so that is almost 11. His pace, on the other hand, sits at 11 on the nose, which is a pretty good improvement from where it was, 2 years ago now when it was at 9.0. So I'm pretty happy about that. Gregory Chevalier has, of course, been breaking into the first team. Since he kind of first generated at the club, there has been a few injuries. Of course, he is an injury-prone player. He's missed 2 months in the last year just through injury, which is, a little higher than I'd like. I am currently training his quickness. There's been some okay progression there. His pace has gone up to 10 from 9.4. His acceleration has gone from 12.4 to 13.4. But I still would like to see him get that little bit quicker. Of course, he is 16. He has got room to improve in that regard. Right now, we are still training him as a roaming playmaker with quickness as a focus. Really trying to bulk him up as a well-rounded player. I'd quite like to improve his off-the-ball further. You can see that is now up to 7.6 from 6.4. I feel like if he can improve his off-the-ball and finishing just a little bit, he could even become quite a good kind of flexible, maybe even attacking midfielder. I guess the thing that's always going to let him down is he's never going to be super fast, and that could impact his ability to get from box to box. But I feel like right now the long-term plan with this guy is a deep line playmaker, but we'll see how things develop. Obviously, great to keep hold of him at the moment. Across the rest of the team, of course, a few of the younger players doing well. Ricardo Martin has been performing superbly since we signed him. 7.38 average rating in the league, not to be scoffed at. Has had a few injuries to contend with. You can see, obviously, he's not been around that long, really. And so far this season, he has had 4 separate injuries, stringing, about 9 weeks in total. That's quite a long time for a player to be out across the first 7 months of his time at the club, so hopefully that's not going to be a kind of trend that continues. Axel Aktas, of course, a player who was huge for us last year. He didn't improve quite as much as I would have liked across the entire season. This year he's found himself on the fringes that little bit more. You can see when we have called upon him, he's performed okay. I feel like last year he had such a superb start to the season, it kind of made people forget about the fact that even though he did get injured, when he returned, and even before he got injured, he was just a little underwhelming for us. And, well, he's been a little underwhelming again. We're trying to give him opportunities, but right now he's just not taking them that well. Of course, other younger players, Trincão's just continued to be an absolutely insane player for us development-wise. We're actually training him to be an inverted winger in the left midfielder position, really trying to kind of round him off as a more complete midfielder, you know, help with the long shots, help with the passing. The vision would be good to improve as well. And he seems to have been thriving from this training, which is very, very good to see indeed. Of course, we have Ducasse up front, who's been a bit of a surprise package this year. 29 goals he has for the season. Don't feel like I need to talk quite so much about these players, but yeah, Ducasse has been a step above a few of the other players in the team. Nissakala's done well, breaking into the French national youth team setup, has also established himself as a good backup right back. I do wonder with the new addition to the team in Gautier, if it's kind of not necessarily the end of Nissakala's plans, but you kind of compare Nissakala to him, there's not a whole massive difference between the players right now. Nissakala better going forward, but not so quite so good in the air or with his kind of acceleration. But Gautier, as I said, he's not going to be available to play for us for a year and a half. So we've kind of got to make the most of his development whilst we can. But I feel like Nissakala, he has been a pretty good player for us so far this year when we've called upon him. Andre Almeida is an interesting case. Joined us this year, the youngster, a player with some good potential. The dilemma with him really is, how do I want to approach him? We've given him some first-team football, but he's not performed that great. He's the kind of player who I kind of brought in to be a backup player, but at 18, he could still develop quite a lot. I'm thinking that next year it might even be worth loaning him out. He's quite a complete centre mid, perhaps a little lacking technically, but a loan might just do him the world of good. At 18, 19, he looks like he's kind of ready for first-team football regularly. It's just unfortunate that in our current squad, I just can't find a spot for him. Anyway, in terms of the reserve team and what's going on here, you can see Rafael Diarra still playing in the reserves. Still a player I'd like to see a little bit more of in the first team. I feel like when we have the inevitable departures of Ogier and Gibaud, potentially at the end of this season, certainly in the next few years, he's going to be a ready-made replacement to come in and kind of fill in. He looks like a very good player. He has some good potential. Of course, he is still only 23. But unfortunately, right now, he's just kind of playing in the reserves and doing his thing here. Max Courtier has improved a lot. Oh, is it Max Courtier? I guess it's not. We'll just call you Coot. Why not? But Coot here, you can see great flair, professional personality, has been a surprise package really. Has developed quite a lot. Kind of keen to see him continue to do so. Wanted by a lot of players. Of course, last episode of the Academy, I talked about the fact that there was quite a lot of interest in some of our hot prospect youngsters. That is still very much the case. In terms of the other hot prospects here, Jordan D'Ambrosio, a player who I don't feel like I've talked about that much, but we loaned him out this year to ASM Belfort, who are one of our one of our affiliate teams. So far, he's been putting in great performances for them. He's only 18. Looks like he could be a pretty good striker going forward. A young player who does turn 19 soon. But at least in the league below us, he's really found a level that he's competent and comfortable playing at. Similar story for Lasmi in a lot of ways. He's not been performing fantastically. Of course, he only went on loan to the Nacional side, Red Star FC, back in, January. He's not played super regularly for them, but so far, so good for him. It's an okay loan. He's developed, as you can see here, a little. Unfortunately, he feels like a player who has kind of just been left a little bit behind as the team's rapidly kind of progressed over the course of this year. We have got a few other players out on loan. A lot of these slightly more senior players, not regens who have come into the club, but rather real players who, in real life, they want those first-team opportunities, and we've been giving them to them in terms of loaning them out to get that opportunity. Thomas Carrica's been throwing up a bit of a fuss because he's a player who did want to go out on loan. However, right now I'm training him to play centre-back. If I was to loan him out, that's going to compromise his training. So at least right now, we're going to continue to train him at centre-back and hope that he can pick it up a little bit more. But yeah, he is unhappy, but I can't really afford to loan him out because it's going to really impact his development. Anyway, we also have Sen Hadji here, of course, a player who found himself a spot in the first team last season. This year, just never really been in contention. Has done okay when we've called upon him in the reserve team, but feels like a player who's just not going to be ready for Ligue 1 football next year, assuming we do get promoted. Anyway, looking across the rest of this team, there's quite a lot of players here. I don't want to call them necessarily dead wood, but they are kind of players who were in the academy when I first came across some of these. They're players who just really haven't lived up to their billing, haven't really developed that much, and well, whose contracts I'm not too worried about letting run down. You can see there are a handful of players here whose contracts are going to be running out at the end of the season. There isn't a massive kind of motivation, I guess, to renew them. I know a lot of people have told me that Mole Tennis has been a really good player for them. For me, he's just not been that great. You know, you kind of compare him to some of the other youngsters we have. He's just not developed the same way that, say, Lacroix has, who's been just the benchmark, I guess, when I'm looking at players and, you know, potential centre-backs. I have to compare them to this guy because he is kind of the mould, I guess, that we've established in terms of a player coming from the reserve team and breaking into the first team. So that's a little bit about the reserves, you know, lacking perhaps a little bit of talent. Of course, in our under-19s, we do have some pretty good kind of talent here across the board. A few of the new additions, of course, players from youth intakes like Orvray here. Also, Gautier and Marchand kind of tipping the scales and being right here at the top. Of course, last year we did have a good intake. It was a surprisingly deep intake. I feel like this year we've kind of had 3 really good players. This time last year we were talking about a real kind of good core of players. Players like Guigan here, who, you know, I feel like a little bit of the attention perhaps was lost on some players last year because of how good Chevalier was. But Guigan has developed absolutely superbly. That fairly professional personality has worked wonders for him. We're training him to play as a ball-playing defender. You can see right now he is a very limited player in terms of what he can do. He's kind of that typical kind of limited defender whereby he's, well, you can see his vision's not that great. His first touch isn't too bad, I guess. His passing is bad. I want to see these improve. You can see his passing has improved quite a lot from 4 to 5.2. It's important that with this kind of player that he continues to improve. His vision actually has improved significantly from 3 to 4.8. I have faith that even though he is only 15, even though right now he looks like a very limited defender, we can round him off technically by training him as a ball-playing defender and hopefully find a player within him who hopefully can break into the first team. He's had a lot of interest in him from big clubs, and as tough as it is to sometimes judge the true potential of players at this age, you know, 5-star for us right now is kind of a low-end league kind of player. So to know if these players are even better than that, you know, if they're better than the best players we have in our team is difficult to tell. However, a good benchmark is the team's interest in a player. Assumption Mohammed had interest from Lyon for him. He's improved a lot this year already. He's improved a lot physically. His technicals still have a little way to go in terms of his finishing and composure. Right now we are training his finishing. You can see that has improved from 6.8 to 8.6 in the course of the last year, which is a fantastic bit of improvement. Hopefully that can continue. Other players here, Gregory Hubert, been playing very regularly at, well, youth level, you can see here. Of course, that left-back player, he's wanted by a few players as well. He's wanted by Marseille. Again, it's usually a good indicator of how good a player is. The lad, a player who you can see here, we have been tutoring, and it's worked wonders. He's gone up to 14 for his determination. He was being tutored by Gibaud, but he has actually just finished his time with him. So, yeah, good development there in terms of the determination, but you can see he's improved elsewhere in the kind of various positions he can play. He is a fullback naturally, and his position could be a little bit at risk, I guess, with Gautier coming into the team. But we'll see how he gets on. He's 16, he's still improving a lot, playing fairly regularly. I'm excited to see what this guy can achieve in the next few years. Rosignol is a player who has had a lot of interest in him. He was one of the players who generated at the club when, of course, we ticked the box when starting the game to add players to playable teams. He looks okay. I'm still not overly convinced by him. He's 18, turns 19 quite soon. Looks like he could be one of those players who has great potential but never quite meets it, unfortunately. Beyond him, Sofiane Adi has looked very, very good. The Moroccan here, you can see very good potential on him. Lacking a little bit in the air as a centre-back, but he's also lacking a lot technically to be a very good full-back, particularly in the kind of system we play. In terms of how we're training him, I am training him to play centre-back and training his jumping reach. There has been some improvements there. You can see it's gone from 9.4 to 10.4. Granted, that is over a fairly lengthy period of time. I do feel like for him, it's going to be a struggle for him to reach his potential. And he just isn't quite that well suited to any one role, unfortunately. Anyway, Breton here, again, a player who I talked about last time as being a player who I wasn't overly convinced by. I probably should be getting him tutored by Gautier. That would be very beneficial, just because he has got very low determination right now. The issue with this guy really is he's a fullback who has, well, put it lightly, just really bad physicals. His pace just is poor. You can see here, obviously, playing as a fullback, we're training his quickness. His acceleration has gone from 6.6 to 7.4. His pace has gone from 5.6 to 6.8. So some okay improvements there, but he's still got a long way to go as a fullback in terms of improving that quickness if he ever wants to feature in my first team plans. I require fullbacks who can get up and down the pitch, and I feel like that's always going to be a struggle for him. Anyway, we have here Lallimore. Good player, good centre mid. Definitely a centre mid just because his aerial ability is so poor. You can see right now we're training him as a ball-winning defender. Ball-winning midfielder. Just trying to kind of make the most of him. He's the kind of player who, again, fits that mould of a very good player, at least on paper. A little bit limited with his technicals. His potential looks great, but I just don't see where he fits into any team. He doesn't really look that well suited to any one role. Anyway, just the two more players we'll go through real quick. Mchanga, good player, 18 years old, second year at the club. We're training him right now, if we look, to play inside forward. Just trying to round him off as best as possible. His good determination has served him well. Still got a long way to improve, I feel like, if he wants to play in the first team. But he's done pretty well for us so far. And well, the last player we'll look at quickly is this guy, Gary Morio. I don't know, answers on a postcard. You can see here, he's a good player, unambitious. That's not a good personality. Unfortunately, we just don't have that many tutors to tutor him, and there's just players higher up the priority list. You can see he looks actually like he could be a very good centre-back, other than his mentals being absolutely garbage, which is a little bit of a shame. In terms of his training, we're just training him to play centre-back, trying to improve him in a few of the mentals that really matter. It's a bit of a shame because he is a very consistent player, but there's just a lot of other elements of his game holding him back. But yeah, he is one of a number of very talented centre-backs that we've got. And I feel like he kind of, unfortunately, falls victim to the fact that the centre-mid position is just an area that we are very stacked in. You can see here, looking at our under-19 squad, it is fairly large. It's a little bloated. I mentioned before, but I felt a little bit like I'd overdone it myself when I was kind of bringing in youngsters last year and asked my assistant to do it. I released a lot of youngsters just recently. You can see here we had trials finish on certain players, but I have also released a fair few players from the youth team. There's certainly an argument to be made to maybe release just a few more of these to provide the first team opportunities to the real hot prospects. But you look across our under-19 squad here, lots of players with high potential. Of course, it's worth remembering the fact that whilst they have good potential now, that 5-star potential is only a good League player, like a low-end player like Panna. And so, as we strive forward over the next few years, there's inevitably going to be some of these names who you look at right now and think, oh man, that guy could be a really good kind of starting player in the first team in years to come, who are going to be nothing more than kind of backups and probably players we end up having to sell on. I'm quite realistic in that regard. You know, I'm kind of, right now it looks great. It'd be easy to give a false kind of sense of over-optimism, I guess, when you look across this team, because there is some very good young players, but at the same time, there's a difference between the good youngsters right now and the great youngsters that we'll have in years to come, hopefully, when we are fighting, hopefully, you know, against the likes of PSG and Monaco for a League spot. But anyway, guys, that is going to wrap up everything from me. A good intake, I think, all in all. Valentin Gauthier, definitely the pick of the bunch. A few other players who were okay, I guess, in that kind of youth intake. A few players who might be able to achieve something if we give them an opportunity. We'll certainly bring them into the youth team and give them a year or two to show us what they've got. I'm happy with the intake, don't get me wrong. It wasn't exactly the deepest intake, but the one-star player in Gauthier is, you know, more than I could have anticipated. I don't think he's quite as good as Chevalier, but looking at him, he doesn't have as many weaknesses in terms of he isn't injury prone and he already has good consistency, which I really like the look of, and I'm kind of keen and curious to see how this guy gets on in the years to come. Anyway, guys, that is going to be all from me today. Let me know how your youth intakes have been so far in FM18. I have had a lot of people tweet me doing social saves who have shown me their best youth prospects. They've had some pretty good ones as well, and even people managing, you know, other kind of less common kind of countries. A few people in Denmark were telling me they were getting really good regens. Someone mentioned Crew Alexandria. They were playing as them in the championship and getting kind of 3-star players in their intakes. I don't know if something's changed with the FM youth intake algorithm. It seems like there's more players appearing with better current ability this year, which is a little odd. I'd be interested to know if that's just me going off a few select examples or if you've experienced anything similar. But anyway, that's going to be all from me, guys. Hopefully you did enjoy. Leave a like if you did. And other than that, it's me, Jack, and I will talk to you guys in a bit. I'm out.